Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Carolyn here. Today we're talking about food addiction and the 5 things you may not know that could hurt you. So let's get started. So, first of all, I know that food addiction affects a large number of people. And if you go on Google and check out food addiction, there's over 200 million searches for food addiction. And yet, and still, it's not considered a medical diagnosis by the medical community. So it's not in the DSM 5 or with binge eating disorder, for example. But there are studies that are looking to make it part of the DSM 5 to have a medical diagnosis called food addiction. And the studies are using a tool called the Yale Food Addiction Scale. The Yale Food Addiction Scale is based on the same criteria that we use to diagnose addictions like drug addiction or alcohol use disorder. And basically, it asks questions, for example, about symptoms you have when you don't have access to your, what I call your food fix, or your craving food or your comfort food, however you want to call it. And there's been several studies that have come out based on the Yale Food Addiction Scale. And they found out that 5 to 10% of the general population in the United States meet criteria for food addiction. People with food addictions, some of the symptoms that you may be having include food obsessions, binging, body image issues, and sometimes depression and anxiety. So what I want to talk about today are just 5 things that you may not know about that we can help you understand food addiction. The first one is that yo-yo dieting will make food addiction worse. So just like people with binge eating disorder or emotional eating or compulsive overeating, everybody's go-to is get on the latest fad diet. And I'm going to be writing in my Psychology Today blog about the comparison between the latest fad diets, the keto and the intermittent fasting diet. So look for that because that'll be coming out on YouTube pretty soon, next week or so. But yo-yo dieting will make food addiction worse. If you're not satisfied with your body, you may think, well, doesn't it make sense to go on a diet? If you don't trust yourself to eat what we call healthily, I would say intuitively, doesn't make sense to just be really strict and keep yourself from, thinking about certain foods, those foods that you tend to crave. The fact is, these strategies will never be effective because they don't really address the deeper issues related to food addiction. So many people believe that their problem is that they, quote unquote, need to lose weight. Their problem is their body size or their body appearance. And that's what they focus on by trying to change their body size or appearance. And that's really a very superficial way of addressing the problem of food addiction, and it doesn't work. People believe that, well, if I just could fix the way my body looks, if I could just lose weight, then my life would change and I wouldn't be as stressed out and I would find, a husband or a boyfriend, and I would magically be more comfortable around food when the diet is over. But I think most of you know that that's not true. You may have been on diets in the past, may have even lost weight in the past. So ask yourself, did all those things come true or not? And if the answer is no, they did not, then why do the same thing over and over, hoping to get a different result? Because it's not about the diet. You're not going to find a perfect diet that you'll magically be able to stay on for the rest of your life. That's not going to happen. And if you count up the number of diets you've been on in the past, you may be able to realize that it's not about the diet. The diet can't fix this problem. So I want to give you just with each of these 5 things that we're talking about, and this is number 1, I want to give you a suggested practice just to start moving in the right direction towards healing your food addiction. So the practice for this one is saying to yourself, I will no longer diet. My body is an exquisitely tuned organism that knows how to manage its weight, its shape, its size. I don't need to deprive myself from food in order to make my body work correctly. Okay, so I hope that helps you. The second thing we're going to talk about the 5 things about food addiction is there's a difference between asking yourself, what's wrong with me, and recognize what happened to me. If you're like most people with food addiction, you may be able to recognize that, sometimes you're flooded with emotions, and that's why you grab for the chocolate or whatever you crave, because you're trying to numb or cope with those emotions. Or you may be the kind of person who completely shuts down and is completely unable to even identify or access their emotions. But sometimes the reason your emotions feel so out of control is because of things that have happened to you in the past. And I know a lot of my patients in the Anchor program, for example, have said to me initially, well, that happened 10 years ago, or that happened 30 years ago. I mean, I don't need to think about that now. That doesn't have anything to do with what's happening now. However, we do know that childhood maltreatment or childhood trauma or other traumas, even in your life, may have led to you feeling like you're on red alert all the time. And being on red alert can be exhausting. It can also lead to anxiety, depression, and feelings of guilt and shame. And all of that will only exacerbate your food addiction behaviors. So the practice for this one is to say to yourself, I will become more aware of when I am emotionally hungry instead of physically hungry, and find other ways of coping with my emotional hunger without always using food. So that's number 2. Number 3 of the 5 things you don't know about food addiction is your body has all the wisdom it needs to overcome your food addiction. Now you may be going, huh? Because my body has let me down so many times. You may not feel that your body is an ally. You may think of your body as a kind of a stubborn enemy that you're always trying to beat in the game of weight loss. You may be embarrassed about your body or feel that your body is always throwing you the curveball with those random food cravings and strange sensations that you don't understand, and even stranger needs. So what I'm talking about, though, is that by changing your relationship with food and with your body, you'll be able to actually listen to the wisdom your body gives you. Just think about all those scary movies where someone walks down the dark alley and the music goes dun 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 dun, and then the people in the audience go, "Don't go down the dark alley," and you can feel the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. That's your body telling you that you're entering into a dangerous situation. Well, you can get the same clues from your body when you're getting ready to go on a binge, or when you are obsessing about food, for example. If you're able to listen to your body's emotions and how it feels in your body, you may be able to interrupt the behavior. So the practice for number 3 is, I will interrupt any negative inner dialogue I have towards my body and replace it with a neutral thought. Now I'm going to put all of these practices in the show notes. So you'll have 5 practices for each of the 5 things you don't know. So you don't have to, pull over to the side of the road to write this down. So number 4 is, of the 5 things you don't know, is that unconscious core beliefs can stand between you and your goal to put an end to your food addiction behavior. Unconscious core beliefs. What are these? Well, these unconscious core beliefs are usually formed when we're younger, during a time of trauma or even chaos or change. And these often they're things that then you become unconscious about. And perhaps you didn't even weren't able to cope with the situations that were in your life at that time. And that then led to these beliefs that often have a very negative effect on you as you grow older. For example, you may have learned not to show any emotions as a child to avoid getting hurt. And then that could lead to a core belief of showing others how I feel is dangerous. But think about how that might play out as an adult. If you're in a relationship and you're not able to express your feelings, that's going to make it difficult for you to be in a relationship. So having these negative core beliefs can make food addiction symptoms worse as well. And if not addressed, it can make it difficult for you to overcome or recover from food addiction. So practice number 4 is I will honor that part of me who did what she could to survive instead of continuing with the negative core beliefs. So I can say to myself, I know that I withheld my feelings when I was a kid because I would get hurt if I showed them, but that's not true now. So now I will change that core belief and allow myself to be more in touch with my feelings. So the part of this practice also is that I will start journaling about guiding principles that I can use instead of those negative core beliefs. So for example, instead of the negative core belief of I'm not worthy, a guiding principle could be I value myself. And finally, the 5th thing you don't know about food addiction is that recovery from food addiction may not look how you expect. So, for example, abstinence is a major principle in recovery from substance use disorders. Staying away from the substance. Well, we can't abstain from food, can we? Clearly, we need food to live, I mean. So, one thing that we think about with food addiction, abstinence and recovery then means abstinence from behaviors. So abstinence from behaviors such as eating impulsively, just grabbing whatever, whenever, obsessing about food, or restricting what you eat. If you can abstain from those behaviors, that might be part of what makes up a recovery program from food addiction. Your food addiction behaviors can often serve as a distraction from feelings or emotions or underlying issues in your life and allow you to stay in denial about, the issues that you are not addressing. So we want to come out of denial. So the practice will be, I will be gentle with myself as I learn new ways of being the best that I can be. All right, so I've talked to you before about the anchor program, and the saying in the anchor program is being anchored is about being true to yourself and accessing your inner strength. That's why I called it the anchor program, because that's what I'm working with the people in the program to do, to become more true to themselves and accessing their inner strength. So at some point, you will realize that this fantasy about changing your appearance through dieting is no longer about something that you want. It's maybe you no longer want to just be matching the Western thin ideal of what you should look like. Instead, maybe you're working on the inside and being able to express your true and authentic self, and dealing with issues from the past may be more of value to you right now. At the end of the day, what most people want is to be able to express themselves fully and without fear of judgment. And it's really important to understand what it means to be true to yourself, to shut off that inner critic that always is saying negative things about you, and instead listen to your inner wisdom, that wise part of yourself that guides you with kindness and gentleness towards whatever goal you want to achieve, whatever goal is right for you. So there's a quote from an unknown person that says, one day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. I like that quote. So if you've been struggling with food addiction, I hope this video has helped you to understand more about your food addiction behaviors. And I just want to remind you that you're not alone. And if you want help, if you're ready to go beyond dieting and really work to make peace with food in your body, just check out the show notes below, and they will give you a link to schedule a free consult to talk about your own individual food and body image issues. Dr. Carolyn signing off.